Welcome to Detroit's Darkest Times. Today's topic is death in the city. And these events that I'm going to talk about is things that I've saw, things that I've heard, so that being said, we're going to start off by Edmondson Elementary in Detroit City. Edmondson Elementary in Detroit City is a school I attended for about 6 years. And during this time, we had, just like any other school, sometimes we would have dances at the school. And at this time, you didn't have to pay money. You just took canned food, and that was the way you pay your way in. And they would collect a bunch of canned food from people and stuff, and then they would give it out to the needy people that needed food and stuff like that. But we had some good dances at that school, and a lot of times people wouldn't bring. Some people would bring, a decent canned food, but a lot of people would bring a canned food that, they had at their house, but they didn't like it anyways. But one thing about it is when you're hungry, I don't know if any of my audience has ever been in this position, but when you're hungry, you're going to eat just about anything, because you're not going to be picky on what you eat. Because hunger is a serious matter. And, but anyways, that being said, as time went on, and we used to walk back and forth to school from our house to school, and then sometimes in the evening time, we would all just go. If we met up, we would all walk together. But if we didn't, we would, everybody would be separated or whatever. But I used to go through the first alley by my school, and it's basically just a shortcut. Instead of walking all the way up, my school was on Canfield and Trumbull. Instead of walking from the school all the way up to Trumbull, I would just go up about a half a block, and then I would dart down the alley, and then I would cross, when I'd go down the alley, I'd cross over to Trumbull and then walk down Trumbull to my house. And I lived like in the middle of the block on Trumbull and Selden. But anyways, as I'm walking, taking this shortcut a lot, going through this alley, there's these two Mexican women, and they would talk to me a lot, stop me and talk to me and stuff as I was going down the alley. And but now that I think about it, at this time I'm a young man, and maybe they was just wanting to be friendly. But now that I think about it, you never know what their intentions was, because I was a young man, in elementary school, you know, because you know, in them days, a lot of kids got kidnapped, just like they do, today. But I don't think it's as big as it was back then. But I could be wrong. But anyways, I enjoyed stopping and talk to them. They were both Mexican women. They were very pretty, and they would stop me and just chat with me, and a lot of times they would walk me down the alley to the street, and a lot of times they'd tell me stories about the guy that they was living with, how he was violent and beat on them a lot and stuff like that. And I don't know if they just wanted somebody to talk to or what it was, but as of right now, they could have just been friendly women, basically. But as I think about it, as an older person, you never know, But they were nice, nice women, and I never got the feeling that they was wanting to kidnap me or anything like that, But when you're young, you don't even think about stuff like that. But anyways, I go through this alley a lot, and I talk to them. Not every day, but most, 2 or 3 times a week, whatever. And a lot of times on Fridays, because they would be out hanging out in their backyard. And but anyways, one time I'm going through there, and there's only one of them, and she stops me. She's, first they, just say how you doing and stuff like that, and then I asked her where her sister was, and then she said she's in jail, and I said, in jail for what? And she said, over the weekend they had an incident, and the guy that used to beat on him a lot, she actually ran him over with the car in the alley, and then she killed him with the car. And I thought that was really crazy, because that's just, things you'd see on TV or something like that, And I asked her where she gonna get out, and she said that she was working on trying to get her out of jail, and but that was one death that took place on Canfield, right off of Trumbull in the alley, And you got to think about it also. Back then, the time I'm talking about, the cars wasn't like today's cars, but you could actually get killed by getting hit by today's car too. But I'm talking about back then, the cars were made like Sherman tanks. You know what I mean? They were big, and a lot of times them kind of cars, you could hit something and it would put a dent in the car, and that would be about it. Today's car, if you hit some, it's probably going to demolish the whole car, because right now everybody's just rolling on plastic, rubber, plastic. And I want to touch on this for a quick second about the car situation. back in the days, they really made some real cars in Detroit, Michigan. Some good, solid cars, and they could stand. If you bumped into a pole at a grocery store, or if you got in a car accident with another car, it would take a lot to damage a car of that kind back in them days. And the price of them cars brand new, you could Google it and check out older cars and see how much they cost brand new, because different cars went for different prices. But they're selling cars. The same kind of vehicle as far as the name, but really, these cars have no real weight to them. So a lot of times, some of these cars on real rainy days, somebody hits a little puddle of water, the car hydroplanes off the road or into another vehicle because there's no weight to it, And then, they made the cars today so light, it's just, you're mostly just riding on plastic, fiberglass, aluminum. I mean, just things that's not got no weight to it, And even a motor today, in today's time, a strong dude could pick up a motor in today's time. And back in the day, you couldn't pick a motor up, that's how heavy it was. So not only was the car made of metal, I mean, almost everything was made of metal, or, cast iron or something like that, steel, it was made real back in the day, And them cars would actually save you also in, if you had an accident and stuff, you'd be more safer in them cars than you would today's cars. Because today's cars, they just crumble up like a Pepsi can. And, or they just break all to pieces because it's all plastic and stuff like that. But the price tag they're putting on cars today, and I'm not trying to hurt nobody's sales or anything like that, but I'm just saying, I'm just speaking, reality 100%. You're going to get, the truth on this channel. And it's from my opinion, Somebody else might have a different opinion. But people of an older generation would know exactly where I'm coming from, And but just the price tags alone that they're putting on the cars today is just unreal. You know what I mean? The price tag of they got different price tags for different vehicles, but I'm just say like a $60,000 car today. And that's not much of a vehicle, but 60,000. Okay. And back in the day, you could buy anywhere from 8 to 10 houses for the price they're selling cars for today. And then they're all plastic and stuff, or tin or something. I mean, it's nothing. there's no weight to it. You know, even the transmission case and stuff is like, uh, aluminum or something like that. You know, it's just there's no weight to it like there was back in the day. But not saying that you can't get killed by getting hit by a car in today's time, but just having a car in today's time, having an accident in it, you could possibly get killed, or getting hit by a car, you could possibly get killed. But back in the day with them real cars, you get an accident in them and you might get slinged around a little bit in the car, but that's about as far as it's going to go. And then if you bump into some, it might put a dent on your car. It depends on where you hit at on your car. But the cars were just made so strong that, you couldn't hardly damage them. You really had to do a number on a car to damage a car back in the day. And I just really think that, it's unfair how they sell vehicles today, and versus, a long time ago when the cars were built really good, strong, last, through all kinds of things. And then the cars today is just, you're basically just riding in, I would say, a golf cart that goes pretty fast. So just imagine you driving in a golf cart, 60, 65 miles an hour, and you get in a wreck in a golf cart. That's basically what's going on with the new vehicles today. But shout out to our auto industry, and I just think over the years they just tried to make them, as cheap as they possibly could, and then where they would go a lot further, per gallon of gas and things like that. But just overall, I would take an older vehicle over a newer vehicle any day. Because I know how strong they are, how they'll last, and stuff like that. But it's just over time they've just got so cheap on making cars. It's just unreal, But that's just my opinion. Other people might have a different opinion about it. But a lot of people may agree with me, And then, as time change, you got to change with time. I understand that. But the thing is, when you're doing that and it's costing a fortune to buy a car and it's all plastic, it just really don't make no sense. But what I've noticed over the years, and this is with houses too, back in the day they built a house and it could stand a real heavy windstorm or something like that. But today's homes, forget it. You're like in a matchstick house. It might look nice, but it ain't that strong, And the only way it's going to be pretty strong is if it's got brick all the way around it, and that'll secure it a lot better. But what they're doing today with these big, they're making some big homes. They're putting more wood in the roof of a home today than they are the actual house. And then, and then they're all wood, and the price tag they're putting on them, is crazy. I mean, you'd be better off buying you some land and building your house from the ground up. versus, going in debt for 30 years and, as soon as you're in the house for 5 years, things start falling apart. I know a friend of mine's got a house that's about $400,000, and about three or 4 years after they still live in it, but 3 or 4 years and things started, falling apart, breaking. The the toilet. There's a gasket on the bottom of your toilet, and them started going bad and started leaking. You had to change them out, and just a whole bunch of odds and ends that you got to fix. And people can't say, no, that's just normal wear and tear, because if you're paying that much money for a house, it should be built pretty well where you shouldn't have no issues for a good minute. You know what I mean? That's just my thought on it. But shout out to the home builders. I ain't trying to hurt nobody's sales. I'm just speaking from the heart and from experience. But what I've learned over the years, though, really is people are going to buy something no matter what kind of price tag you put on it. And those of my audience, they'll probably agree with me, because it just starts from shoes. They got shoes now that, and what's crazy is I'll spend a little money on some shoes, but I ain't gonna get too crazy with it. You know what I mean? Because I know for a fact how much they cost to make the pair of shoes. And that's one thing I do. And for my audience, I suggest you do the same thing. One thing I do is, if I go to buy a mattress or something like that, I'll see how much it costs to make a mattress. And then you can see how much they add to it, Like a mattress is like, I think it's like 400, I think it's 400 or 4,000 times the amount that's what they sell the mattress for versus how much they made it for. And I'm just giving you game on this. It's just educate some people, because some people don't think about it. When they got to go buy something, they just go. They try to find the best deal, yeah, but they don't really dig into it to find out how bad they're getting screwed. You know what I mean? And but that's what I do. If I have to go buy a mattress or a couch or something like that, now I always buy the product. You know what I mean? Because you got to have what you got to have. But the thing is, I look to see how much it actually, like, how much it costs us to make one couch or something. And then you can see the markup on it, that once you buy it, how much the markup is. And they might take this video down, I don't know, because I'm just speaking, facts and truth. I'm not trying to hurt nobody's business, because I ain't named no company or anything like that. So basically, it's just my thoughts. So it shouldn't matter. I'm just speaking from what I do and my experience and what I've seen over the years. But I suggest my audience, when you go to buy something, just do some research. You're probably going to buy it anyways, regardless, like a car or a bed or a couch, pair of tennis shoes, whatever. But just check it out and you'll see what I'm talking about, and you'll trip out. And But the ideal thing today is to get into some kind of merchandise selling. That's the ideal thing. And it's been the ideal thing for a minute, but I'm just saying on this channel, if you could get into just whatever, start small if you have to. Just if you can get into selling t-shirts, selling jogging outfits, uh, you know, that's the clothing thing is the ideal thing. You don't want a lot of people do shoes, but shoes it's a hit and miss kind of thing. But shoes takes up a lot of room. So if you're trying to store them and all that, it's a little inconvenient. Not unless you could sell them as soon as you buy. You buy or resell whatever. But that being said, one second. That being said, I had to let my dog loose. Sometimes a dog starts barking a lot, interrupts me. But anyways, that being said, I'm just saying, selling, buying and selling, clothes and stuff like that. That's a good thing to get into because things are just going higher and higher every year. It's not, nothing's really given that much, you know. But the markup on things, I'm just saying, the markup on things is just, really it's unacceptable. And a lot of folks is just, if they die down on buying things, they'll drop prices. But if you're steadily going out there purchasing this, and then things are gonna stay the same. The only way it's gonna change is everybody as a whole just kind of slows down on buying things. Once you do that, you'll notice prices drop, regardless what it is: houses, cars, furniture, clothes, food, gas, anything. If everybody as a whole would drop down on things, you could basically control the sales. But it would just take, everybody, to say, hey, things are just too high. We're just going to chill and just buy what you necessarily have to have, and that's it. And that's just thoughts from Detroit's darkest times. But I wanted to touch on that, and now I'm going to continue with the story. Hope I didn't hurt anybody's feelings. But I like keeping it real, So anyways, the apartment building across the street from me in Detroit City, there was now this is a story I've heard, I didn't see. But what I've heard is there was this lady on the third floor of the building across from my house. And I heard this like years down the road after it actually took place. And but anyways, I heard that there was a lady that lived in that building, and She was on the third floor, and back then, you had in apartment buildings, you had like staircases and porches on the back of an apartment building. And it'd be all wood, but it wouldn't be no, it's been there for a long time kind of wood, you know what I mean? Where it's, didn't, people would go up and down the stairs and be on the porch stuff, but it wasn't all that. It just, years pass, it just gets old and old and old, and all they do is just keep painting and stuff like that, if you know what I'm talking about. But anyways, I heard a story one time where the lady lived in the building across the street from my house, and she had fell off the back porch. I don't know if she fell over the banister or fell, maybe was leaning on the banister and, the banister gave away or whatever. But she had fell like 3 stories up to her death, And when I heard that story, that stayed with me for a long time, because the reason is like anywhere I go, like if I'm in a hotel on vacation, I'm like on the 5th floor, the 6th floor, whatever, I'll go out on the balcony, but I will not lean on the banister. I don't care if it's brand new or whatever. And it's just that, that story that I heard, I just, it just makes you wonder, well, if you was leaning on the banister, could you, fall or whatever, and I just basically wouldn't take a chance. So out of all the years that I've been on different levels and on balconies and stuff like that, I don't get nowhere near the railings or anything like that. I just don't put myself in a position where something could happen. You know what I mean? But I thought that was a crazy story. And and this happened years back. And this is the same building. This is the same building that when I was a child, it had caught on fire, and it blew a man out the window.